Before I even had a chance to meet Tomas and Doris in person, I was on a teleconference call with La Malfa, and I brought up the wall, this absurd monument that Trump wants to build to himself. His big, beautiful wall, as he called it. And even though it wasn't part of this budget, he says come September, he's going to try to fight for it again. So I explained to La Malfa, I said, what is really the issue here? And La Malfa's position was, well, our border is too porous. People can just come in and out. And I said, well, if you come into our country and you're undocumented, in most cases it's because you overstayed your visa. So if the point is to try to get people not to come in undocumented and build a wall to that effect, that's not going to solve that problem. And then he said, well, in either case, we're concerned about the security risks of undocumented people in our country. And I said, well, don't you think that Russia actually is a far greater security risk, given that they've interfered with the sovereignty of our elections? They mow their tanks right over into the Ukraine and don't respect the sovereignty of borders in Europe, and that could pull us into a war. So at that point, he switched the argument to the cost. He said, well, actually, our undocumented immigrants are a huge cost on our society. I said, cost. Now, here's an article in the Wall Street Journal of a town in Pennsylvania. And when Tomas and Doris and I met with the Malta staff, we shared that article with them. This town basically would have died. There was manufacturing there that had since gone away. A lot of the local population had left. But this town was wise enough to welcome a lot of refugees, particularly from Syria. That town has been completely rejuvenated. A lot of the immigrants coming from Syria had been teachers, they were college educated, but they didn't know English. And so while they were trying to get established there and learn the language, they were willing to take entry-level jobs. They started businesses. They completely rejuvenated the business community there by patronizing the businesses there as well as starting their own. So this town was alive again because of the refugees coming into the country. And we all know, whether, like me, our ancestors immigrated here many generations ago and had come from difficulties in Europe to start a whole new life here, or we've come in as children, or even as adults. We have some immigrants here from Holland, that it's really the immigrants that have built this nation and made America great. When Trump talks about putting America first, it's the immigrants and our refugees that we welcome that put America first. And, I think one of the motivations that Trump has had in trying to focus on illegal immigrants and on Muslims is he tends to be the master of distraction. And by not focusing on those key issues that are so important for solving real problems, like the growing gap between the very wealthy in the United States and working families, or lifting families out of poverty, instead he'll distract those who already feel bitter and forgotten with blame and scapegoating on an other. So, as many have known throughout history, other has sometimes meant being black, sometimes meant being Jewish, and this time it's undocumented immigrants and Muslims. And so rather than try to solve these problems, he's going to try to redirect everyone's attention by scapegoating a minority group. And there's another motivation, apart from racism and scapegoating. So most immigrants tend to be more liberal-leaning, and the GOP knows this. And they don't want more immigrants coming into the country who tend to vote Democrat or for more liberal parties. They want to be able to keep their base of predominantly older, white Americans. So immigrants tend to be a threat to their voter base. But, I think that the main thing that we can learn and what we can do here in supporting our dreamers and all of our immigrants is to continue to speak out, to our elected leaders. And if they don't listen to us, then we'll let them know, we're going to put other leaders in place that do respect their rights. And it's really critical that we continue to have a voice, because as Martin Luther said, one thing that's very dangerous is when we remain asleep during a great social revolution. So we're all here today to remind Dr. King up there in heaven that we are wide awake and we are prepared to speak out, and we are going to be the voices of justice in the face of injustice. So, if Trump and Sessions want to try to climb up the arm of the Statue of Liberty and snuff out her torch, we will continue to rekindle that light. There is no way that the GOP is going to put the flame out in our torches, which we will continue to carry for you. So we're so delighted again that you could join us here. And, there are going to be some other great events coming up. So the Nevada County Democrats is having their annual gala and auction. So this is Saturday, June 3rd at 5 o'clock. And Hillary Hodge, who's back here in the back. Hillary, would you like to stand up? So come and ask Hillary more information about this. Also, Rosa and I, as congressional candidates, will be having fundraising events. If you're interested in volunteering and staying in touch with us, we've got sign-up sheets in the back. So thank you all again so much for coming out and supporting our dreamers and our immigrants. And yes, Hillary?
I just want to say one more thing, which is that, yes, take our Congress people to task, but take your city council people and your supervisors and everyone local as much to task.
Yes.
Your presence there is as important as your presence everywhere else, if not more.
Yes, absolutely.
Show up to every meeting locally that you can show up to, and write letters and write postcards and never stop.
Yes, absolutely. We won't stop. Yes.
I wanted to ask Tomas a question, because you said you got a reasonable response from the Sheriff's Department. Did you meet with the police department here in Auburn?
I actually I had a conversation with John Ruffcorn over the phone, and pretty much what he told us was that it's up to the city council to decide. So if they actually had if they wanted to, they would have to vote on it and of course have a meeting. But John Ruffcorn said it's up to them. And in the sheriff's, it's the sheriff that decides. So, but in his my conversation with him, he didn't really feel like it was something necessary. He just seemed neutral on that point and just whatever, if something does come down, though, he said through our state or federal government, or no, state government, and then he would have to follow the law. But right now, even Sheriff Bell said this, is they have to first follow state law. And that's good for us, but for a country or for a state like Texas that just had SB 54, and that is very scary. And I really feel for the immigrants and for the dreamers in that state. And I'm not going to vacation in Texas anymore.
How was your response from the city council then?
The city council, actually, what they ended up doing is we requested a formal to be on the agenda, but at the next one, we arrived with 30 the first time, and they were surprised and shocked. And the second time, we arrived with about 50 or 60, and they didn't even put us on the agenda. They ended up writing their response, just letting us know that they're not participating in the program 287G, which would deputize our local law enforcement, that they don't have plans, but that they still left the door open for later on to possibly even if they had to. Yeah.
Well, that's why the SB 54 by De Leon, the
Yes.
Values Act, is so critical not to confuse with Texas's number, because this one specifically addresses this issue of the relationship with law enforcement with federal agencies.
Correct. Yeah, and we have we our California Dreamers group wrote up a little bit on that bill, but there's also other bills like six bills. Like there's the Dreamer Liaison bill by Lowe that will actually place someone at the university and public colleges that knows the issues specifically to Dreamers, because actually when I went to American River College, I was being charged out-of-state tuition, and again, you know, that Mrs. Lethbridge, she was the one that let me know, no, wait, there's AB 540, and the staff still there doesn't know that there's these legislations that will help Dreamers, and some kids right now that qualify for financial aid don't do it because the staff in front isn't educated enough, and so that's what this bill will fund a Dreamer liaison there, and it would help us. And there's also another bill that will prevent people to be immigration consultants unless they're an attorney or certified to do immigration consulting, because right now there's a lot of immigrants being taken advantage of that from people that say, yeah, let me put your paperwork through, but they're not attorneys, and they end up messing up, and they end up getting deported. And these people aren't held accountable for that, and they just end up getting the money. So this bill will prevent people from that. And there's if you pick up one of the flyers over there, it will have information. And this is for the state, so whoever your state senator and your assemblyman, please write to them too, and not just LaMalfa and McClintock, because there's a lot of good stuff out there.
What's the number of the bill for the blue card?
I actually don't know that number.
You know,
It's actually, they presented it at the federal level, but I couldn't find the number associated with it. On Feinstein's website, they have the entire document for you to read. On our California Dreamers Facebook page, I've also posted it there for you to review and read the entire document. It's similar to the Barcaderos program that they used to have before in the 40s, where it allowed people to come into the country and work, and they were able to negotiate salaries for these farm workers, and then they were sent back home after they were done working. But this particular bill will not do that. What this bill will do is allow people to come, or actually you have to be here already for 100 consecutive days as a farm worker, so an agricultural worker, and you can apply that way. Once they verify that you have been here, they will give you a blue card status, which will allow you to travel in and out of the country at any given time. So you won't feel like you're trapped here until you fulfill your duties. And then after 5 years, you can apply for your green card, and they will reevaluate you again as to what you've done as a citizen and how you contributed to the U.S., which I think overall will produce so much great data to show what we really do when we migrate to this country. You know, I don't know if you heard what my crime was, but I went to school, I went to college, I started a business, and his crime was also to go to school and be educated, and I think that was the crime of every single migrant that has spoken tonight. So I don't think the actual idea that we come here and commit these crimes, and we're rapists and we're gang members, we need to really reverse that rhetoric and really readdress what the real migrant really is.
If you haven't had the chance to pick up this paper that we wrote, it also talks about our policy platform for the California Dreamers, and we started this group to get Dreamers speaking out, because we need to put a face to the names, or to the, you know, to kind of almost I want to say rebrand this, not rebrand, but actually take the narrative and because right now the narrative, of course, like Rosa was saying, is, you know, gang members and people that are causing problems in this country, but people like us, we're not that, and people need to see who we are. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna have a lot of volunteer opportunities, because we want to show that we want to build up our town. So we are going to be out in the community wearing our Dreamer shirts, and technically we're all Dreamers, because we're all looking to do the same for each other. So, and you guys can wear those shirts also in support our cause. But I actually wanted to go over one more, which is SB 6 by FUESA, which this proposal seeks to provide funding to provide access to legal representation for non-citizens in removal processing in California. So many people, you know, what I'm hearing with the argument against this bill is that, well, why are you funding, or why are you going to help criminals, you know, get special attorneys? But these aren't special attorneys. Right now, if I were to be picked up by ICE, I wouldn't have a public attorney or a defender. My family would have to come up with the money to help get someone to defend me. And there are nonprofits out there, legal resources, but they're all maxed out right now. The wait for that is months. You know, I work with the Latino Leadership Council, and my client won't get an appointment for a couple months with legal representation. So imagine if I got picked up right now and I don't have anybody defending me, you know, I could be deported the next day. So this bill would give a small amount of money to fund attorneys to be able to represent people, because our only crime is wanting to live in this country and make it better. So, thank you.
Thank you so much again for everyone coming out. Hillary, yes.
If we are going to leave here and do one thing, what is that thing that we should do?
Well, we've got postcards in the back, but definitely, as you said, you know, I would definitely call the local representatives at the county level and also the city level, as well as the state and federal representatives, to let them know your support for these bills and also where you stand. That Trump's rhetoric and his desire to try to round up innocent people whose only crime has been that they're here undocumented is very un-American, and it's instilling fear in our communities. And if his goal is security, it's making our communities less safe. So let's stand up for them and take action. Thank you so much.